Hello and welcome to the world famous and award-winning Driving You Crazy podcast. This is the show where we talk about all things transportation, anything that gets you from here to there. I'm the traffic anchor and the transportation reporter for Denver 7 News, Jason Luber, and if you would like to contact me, you sure can on any of my contact links in the description of the show. If you wouldn't mind rating the show, I'd appreciate that too. And I'm just now reminding myself that I have not changed the voicemail message on the voicemail number, which is 303-832-0217. I should probably do that post-haste because I said I was going to do it in the last episode, and as I probably said in the last episode, I was going to totally forget and not do it, and that's exactly what happened. Yay, me. I am so... Okay. Anyway, I don't think it's too strong to say that there is a national school bus safety crisis in this country. Earlier this year, the National School Transportation Association released a survey that showed in just one day across the United States, over 250,000 drivers illegally passed a stopped school bus. 250,000. You can imagine why this is dangerous. Hundreds of children have been hit. Some have been hit fatally. And the driver of the school bus, when they see this happen, they're supposed to try to write down the make and the model of the car that passed them, try to get a driver description, but you know that is very tough as a bus driver, and it's almost impossible to remember it and write it down so quickly. Well, one company has some really interesting technology that could help catch these offenders automatically and hopefully decrease these illegal and dangerous passings. Joining me now is Justin Meyers. He's the president and chief innovation officer of BusPatrol. It's said to be the world's most trusted and deployed stop arm safety program. Justin, thanks so much for being here on the world famous Driving You Crazy podcast.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to talk about this very important issue. As you noted, unfortunately, every community in this country is victim to cars illegally passing school buses. And you can talk to any parent on the street. Every person who's ever put a child on a school bus has seen something like this happen. And it is a threat to the safety of every child going to school in the United States. And at the end of the day, going to school should be the safest thing a kid does. And that's what we do here at BusPatrol. We try to ensure child safety on their commutes to and from school.
Yeah, that's right. You have worked much of your career in public safety. Is that why you wanted to be a part of this effort?
Yeah, absolutely. I spent almost 20 years in law enforcement and government, serving local communities all across the country. I was a assistant police commissioner, helped run a DA's office, was chief of public safety in New York City. And when I was retiring from government and looking towards the private sector, I was looking to continue work of meaning and trying to stay in the space of public safety and trying to find ways to continue to serve communities. And that's exactly what BusPatrol does. We partner with hundreds of communities across the country because I have to tell you, you might be thinking, well, how often does this tragedy really strike? Thank God, not every day, but it does happen. And when it does, it rocks communities, right? But what goes unnoticed, and we'd love to share some of these videos with you, Jason. What goes unnoticed is the number of times, hundreds, thousands daily, that children are diving out of the way of a car. And in many cases, and you can go on YouTube and watch these videos, children are actually struck by vehicles. This just happened just last week in Maryland on one of our buses. A child was struck, flipped in the air, hit the ground, got up, walked to the bus, went to school. And but for that system, that event would have never been captured. Now think about that as a 7 or 8-year-old child or as a parent. Imagine your kid diving out of the way of an 80-mile-an-hour car or being, God forbid, hit by that car and going to school. You're a 7-year-old child. That's a traumatizing event you now associate with going to school, right? And so that's really where we get the greatest impact in creating that safer environment for children.
And you probably have a laundry list of stories just like that where you've captured a driver either hitting some kid or just passing the bus, and hopefully those people have been sent a violation and won't do it again. But you probably have a whole list of stories like this.
Oh yeah, it's sadly It happens almost every single day across this country, and we capture it on the buses that we are on. And we oftentimes talk about it. It's traumatizing even to work and at here and have to watch those videos on a daily basis. Your heart constantly goes out, but that's what motivates us here at Bus Patrol. We have the opportunity to show up every single day and protect 2 million kids on their way to and from school every single day. It's real work of meaning. We're very, very passionate about it, and we are constantly looking for opportunities to grow that impact across the country.
And it really is that how you can most simply describe what Bus Patrol is? Because we'll get into the weeds about how the technology works. But before we do that, I really wanted to know about, in the simplest terms you can give, what is Bus Patrol?
Yeah. In the simplest terms, Bus Patrol is a technology provider. And what we do is arm school buses in a community with high definition cameras and an AI system that watches those cameras. And when the school bus is stopped and the stop sign is deployed and children are entering or exiting the school bus, if someone illegally passes that school bus and endangers the lives of those kids, our system captures that event. So records the violation happening, captures the license plate, creates an evidence package, sends that to local law enforcement, and local law enforcement can make a decision as to whether or not they want to enforce the law and issue a ticket to that driver.
All right. So I'm going to get into some of those issues here in just a second. But going back to these cameras and sensors that you have on the bus, how are they attached to the bus? How many do you have on there? Where are they mounted?
Yeah. So we do 8 enforcement cameras, and then we also offer at no cost to school districts interior cameras for added child safety inside the school bus. But on the enforcement side, we have a front-facing camera, so basically like a dash camera, if you will, a rear-facing camera that's on the exterior of the bus that points out in the back direction. We then have a fisheye lens on the stop sign side of the bus on the top of the bus, so that can see the entire length of the bus. So if an event were to occur where someone illegally passes, that one camera lens can see the entire event happening. Then we have 4 license plate reading cameras on the side of the bus that are capable of capturing a license plate up to 8 lanes of traffic wide. And then there's an 8th camera on the opposite side of the bus, which we call the side load camera, so you can see the kids getting on and off the bus. Yeah. That's the enforcement system. Those cameras are then hooked into a CPU and a GPU and a DVR that lives on the bus. We have a proprietary AI system that we coded that lives on the bus. Now, it's not a scary AI that's ever going to take over the world. It does one thing and one thing only. It's an object recognition AI system that identifies a car illegally passing a school bus. If the AI captures that happened on those cameras, it automatically cuts all the relevant footage from all those different camera feeds and uploads it to the cloud for human processor to review and add additional pieces of evidence for law enforcement to review.
I'm sure there had to be some kind of research before you mounted these cameras and sensors on the bus, where the best places to mount them on the bus was in order to catch the violators, because you have that fisheye one on the side away from where the kids were or are, and when they get on and off the bus. But why not on because I've seen videos of people passing on the side where the kids are getting on or off.
Yeah, so there have definitely been a number of iterations. Bus Patrol has been in business for nearly a decade now, and we're on many different versions of our technology, constantly evaluating. Obviously, everyone knows the tech space and hardware space is always evolving, and so we have teams on the ground both in the U.S. and abroad that are constantly evaluating the best tech that's out there. And so we're always adjusting and upgrading our cameras to be edge capable, putting better antennas, better even down to the cabling and harnessing and how we equip these buses and these systems, always updating and evolving that system. Now, the question about the right side pass. Now, in all 50 states, it's illegal to pass a school bus when it's stopped and the stop sign is deployed. A right-hand side pass is, we believe at Bus Patrol, and every law in every state's a little bit different, but we believe that's a little bit more than just a civil violation. If you illegally pass a school bus, past that stop sign, that's a civil violation. There's no points on your license. You get a ticket, you're notified of the behavior, and hopefully that person makes that adjustment. But someone who's willing to pass on the right side of a bus, that means you're driving directly through those children's stop the children's school bus stop, right? That's a very dangerous action, and that's really escalates to something greater than just a civil violation. We think the police should be involved in that time, which is why we install panic alarm systems on the school bus along with the rest of the system at no cost to school districts. We provide the school bus driver a button. So if an event like that happens, they can hit that button and law enforcement can be notified immediately and be provided in real time that video from that side load camera that happens. Now, in some states, they also want to be able to do enforcement automatically on a right side. So like in Florida, Florida law requires for there to be an automated enforcement system on both sides of the bus. And we do in that state have a system that can operate in that way.
So, but it's up to the bus driver to hit the button, not necessarily or is it?
Nope.
No, it just does it automatically.
Fully automatically. The system does the automated enforcement automatically. But if the bus driver notices that, like, hey, there's something happening here that's above and beyond a traffic violation, right? There's some criminality. And we have videos. We're happy to share with you. We have videos in which like drivers are going 40, 50 miles an hour down a sidewalk on the side of the bus, driving through, a children's school bus stop. Something like that. That's a criminal event. And so in a circumstance like that, the bus driver can hit the panic alarm and local law enforcement can be automatically notified.
Interesting. My guest is Justin Meyers. He's the president and chief innovation officer of BusPatrol, talking about their BusPatrol safety program, the cameras and the sensors that they put on the buses. I imagine the cams and all this system is hooked up in the electrical system. So is it on all the time, or is it only operating when the reds are on? Which, basically when the stop, line, when they hit the stop button and the bus is stopped.
It's one of the best parts about our program is that the cameras are always running. The AI that issues the tickets, that's built into the telematics of the bus. And so the AI is only starting to watch for violation when the bus has activated its lights and the stop sign is starting to come out. That's when the AI comes on and starts looking for violations. But for the school district and the local community's perspective, those cameras are rolling all the time. And BusPatrol doesn't own that data, the school district does. And so the school district or the bus operators can utilize that data in other circumstances. So in some states, we've had circumstances in which a school bus has been involved in an accident, and we're able to pull that video. The school district's able to pull that video and determine what happened right away. Sadly, we had an event in New York and another one in Maryland and Virginia in which firearms were associated and some folks were shooting at a school bus, if you can believe that. And the video was able to be provided to local law enforcement to utilize that as well. So if the bus is on, the cameras are rolling, the school district has that video. The video actually lives on the bus. So this isn't something where like, oh, we're just streaming video of a community. There's a DVR on the bus. The bus's recordings are there. It gets written over every 30 days. But if local law enforcement or the school district wants to go and access that video, they can.
Yeah. But you also said that it can be uploaded in real time then if, you're hitting the panic button so law enforcement knows what's happening right now.
That's precisely right.
Yeah. So what other role does the AI serve in this detection? Obviously, it's going to identify the vehicles and the license plate, but can it also identify the driver? Can it do all of that, or is it only identifying the vehicle and the plate?
It's identifying the vehicle and the plate. So every state's a little bit different, right? So in every state, it's illegal to pass a school bus. But in order to enforce the law with automated enforcement, it is required to pass independent legislation authorizing the use of automated enforcement in a particular state. So when a state does that, the regulatory scheme around automated enforcement and how the system operates is set forth by the state. And so in most states, so I just give you that caveat to say that Colorado could be different. But in most states, the way that it works is that it is a civil violation associated to the car and not the driver themselves. So no points on the license. It's more akin to like a parking ticket than it is a speeding ticket.
So the driver then might say that it wasn't me, right?
That's right. So the ticket goes to the vehicle. And so like in some states, there'll be registration tagging on the ticket if it goes unpaid or whatnot. But there is oftentimes in most states the opportunity for an affidavit. So if the driver says like, hey, wasn't me, or even a better example, let's say you rented a car and Hertz owns that vehicle. Well, the ticket would go to the registered vehicle owner, which would be the rental car company, and they can sign an affidavit and send it into local law enforcement that says, "Hey, we weren't driving the car. So, and Justin Meyers was driving the car at that time."
Right. But if you were driving the car and then you said, "Well, it wasn't me because I have the right to face my accuser," then how they would have then the burden of proof to find out if it really was you or if it was me or if it was somebody else who borrowed or stole your car.
Sure. Yeah. There is a contestation process, like any violation that you get. If you get a parking ticket, a speeding ticket, you're always allowed to plead not guilty and go to court and present that evidence and be able to argue your case. And this ticket is no different. If local law enforcement decides, I think that's an important stipulation, right? Bus Patrol does not issue tickets, right? We create evidence packages that go to law enforcement, and local law enforcement enforce the law. But if you decide that you're not guilty and you have proof of that and you want to contest your ticket, on the back of your notice of violation, there's a contestation coupon. You fill it out, you send it in, and you'll be heard in court just like any other violation.
But you don't need proof. You're accusing me. I'm being accused of a crime. I have the right to face my accuser.
Sure. Yeah. So
That's
it would
how
be.
this works.
So it's actually not a crime. It's a civil violation, but it's set forth in the regulatory scheme of the law in the state. So it's a little bit hard to be specific about how it would work in Colorado, because currently Colorado does not have a state legislation on this. 29 other states do, but Colorado is not one of them yet. Although it is being considered.
Because I'm thinking about this in the same way as photo radar, because when an officer pulls you over for a ticket, let's say you're doing a moving violation, you're speeding, you get pulled over. It is actually, when he hands me the ticket, it's actually a summons to court. It's not just, and then if I pay it and I sign the back of it, I am taking a plea deal for lesser fines and fewer points and that sort of thing. So it's a different. So if I'm being accused of running the stop sign on a bus, then I have the right to face my accuser. Otherwise, it's just I can, like right now with the photo radar tickets, I can throw them in the garbage and I don't have to pay it.
Sure. Yeah. So as I said, it'll depend on what the state regulatory scheme will determine how that process plays out. And it will say who has the burden of proof, what level of burden of proof. In the criminal justice system, there's different levels of burden of proof, right? So beyond a reasonable doubt is for felonies and punishment. Misdemeanors have a lower burden. Violations have an even lower burden of proof. So it would just depend on how Colorado wrote the law, and it would be defined in the law on what that process was. But rest assured, there is absolutely always a fair contestation process and an opportunity for anyone to have due process if they feel that they were inappropriately ticketed.
My guest is Justin Meyers. He's the president and chief innovation officer of Bus Patrol, talking about their technology of how it detects people passing a stopped school bus with kids getting on and off. Humans, as I understand, ultimately then, if there's a violation that the AI detects, that a human will actually look at that video. So what criteria do they use to determine if a violation has occurred or not?
Yeah. So as I said, the AI captures that violation, cuts the evidence package, and uploads it to the cloud. Then a human being at Bus Patrol reviews that and ensures that the computer got it right, right? And the criteria that they use is very simple. What is the state law? And the state law is very clear. It defines what an illegal pass is and what an illegal pass isn't. So that human will look at the law and look at the violation and determine whether or not it meets the letter of the law. If it does, they'll then pull in additional data points like DMV records, who the owner of the vehicle was, information about the school bus route, and ensure that it was actually a registered school bus stop that the bus was at, and all of those various different aspects. Then once that processor reviews that, puts that package together and accepts it, it actually goes to a quality assurance team at Bus Patrol again, who then reviews that and makes sure that the first person got all of that information correct. If that all meets the letter of the law and that is a good violation, then it's sent to local law enforcement, and an independent police officer or sheriff is going to review that evidence package and make their own determination as to whether or not, if they had been there as a police officer and seen this violation happen, would they issue a ticket? And if the answer is yes, then they will issue that ticket.
So since this video and your teams are reviewing it several times, and then it gets sent on, as you said, to the local authorities, they could determine if there's no violation, right? So I would think that if the bus patrol reviewers, they might have a lower standard of violation. If it's something is close, they might have a lower standard of violation so that they can leave that ultimate decision up to the local law enforcement.
So the way that we approach that's a great question, and the way that we approach it is we provide evidence packages to the letter of the law. So we try not to be subjective about what is or isn't a violation. We try to look at the black and white language of what the law is in that particular state, and then provide evidence packages that meet the burden of that criteria. Local law enforcement on any moving violation, whether it's an automated enforcement ticket, a speeding ticket, whatever it may be, police officers always have a level of discretion. And so we meet strict letter of the law, and then the law enforcement officer can then review that and determine, hey, look, I think there's an extenuating circumstance here. If I had been there personally, I wouldn't have issued this ticket or wouldn't have pulled that person over. And then we leave all the discretion to law enforcement to make that decision. Because at the end of the day, this is a community program and it needs to be led by the community. And so local community members, local law enforcement, they're in the best position to make the decision on what's best for that local community.
Do you have any records or information about how many of these violations you forward on to law enforcement that then are not sent out as a violation?
I mean, so
really, do you send out more to local law enforcement than they are not sending? Which is higher? You sending them out, or them sending out is the same number, or is there a lower?
No, there's
number?
always it's always a little bit lower of a number. There's always, as I said, we always, meet the letter of the law, and then law enforcement has some discretion. There's always going to be, some gray area. As you noted, very sadly, this is not something that happens rarely. Yeah. This is something that multiple studies show that this happens 43 million times a year in this country. And so there's always going to be some type of extenuating circumstance. So the number of violations or potential violations that we send to law enforcement is always going to be a little bit higher than what law enforcement ultimately makes their decision on. And that's the way it should be, right? Like we should provide everything that meets the letter of the law, and law enforcement should make the decision based on what they think is an appropriate level of enforcement. So there's always going to be a little bit of a change there.
My guest is Justin Meyers. He's the president and chief innovation officer of BusPatrol. You can find them at buspatrol.com. They're talking about their safety program, keeping kids safe, getting on and off buses. Is privacy here a concern? Because you're obviously on public streets. You're operating on public roadways, so you can take video of people on public roadways. That's your First Amendment right there. But when you go into, let's say, a private neighborhood, are you allowed to still use your operations there too, or is it? Do you have permission to do those as well?
Yeah, so I hate to sound like a broken record, but ultimately it always comes down to what does the state law say? And so the state laws generally are pretty specific. It will say something along the lines of automated enforcement, photo enforcement is allowed to be utilized on all roads within X municipality.
Even in private neighborhoods?
Yeah, so generally speaking, yes, it'll depend on if a local police officer could enforce the law. Now, again, in Colorado, for instance, Colorado could pass a law that has some type of specific carve out if it so chose to. But to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any state laws that are on the books. And I could be wrong. I don't have every single one memorized, but I'm not aware of any stipulations that say, that there's a unique nature to.
And Justin, I say that because I know my in-laws live in a public or a private gated neighborhood, and so that way they could have those speed limit signs that say 26 miles an hour instead of 25, or like a private shopping center. There was another one I did a story where they have speed limits of like 12 and a half miles an hour, which is ridiculous. But of course, you it's like the same thing of if you're at a grocery store. You've seen the stop signs in front of the grocery store; those are not enforceable. You just roll right through it.
Right. Yeah. So again, it's going to depend on what the vehicle and traffic law in that particular state says in terms of enforcing private roadways. Generally speaking, though, a police officer can enforce the law in most places. And so in this circumstance, it is the police that are enforcing. But as I said, it's going to be all depend on what that particular state VTL states around about private roadways.
And look, I'm in favor of your system here. These people that speed around a school zone or past school buses, there's a special level of you know what of waiting for them. But I mean, because it's really, to me, it is one of the most dangerous things that can happen when you're around kids. I mean, I don't think people understand how big a vehicle is, how dangerous it can be. They just get in and go, and they don't really realize what damage and mayhem you can cause.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And, people don't really, honestly, it sounds somewhat unbelievable, the scale of this problem. 43 million illegal passes a year. How could that be possible? It's because school buses are actually, believe it or not, the largest piece of government infrastructure we have in this country. There's 500,000 school buses. There's only like 69,000 municipal buses. There's only 330,000 government buildings in this country. That's every school, every post office, every federal building, only 300,000. And there is over 500,000 school buses. Each one of those buses is doing 2 routes every single day, 180 days a year. So if you think about that, you're talking about millions, tens of millions of school bus routes that are happening. And this illegal pass happens 43 million times a year. What that actually comes out to, if you think about how many thousands of cars go by a school bus on a given day, it's really more like once every 4 days or so, someone illegally passes a school bus. And that's why there's so much public support for programs like this. There was a recent study that was done in Florida that said 87% of drivers support automated enforcement on school buses, because everybody has sped in a car once or twice in their life, right? Everybody has rolled a stop sign and maybe not done a 3-second stop when they should have, right? Most people, or at least I should say most people have. Most people have not illegally passed a school bus. And when it does happen, and that's the best part about the program that we offer, is that when it does happen and it's brought to a person's attention, they tend to never do it again. And the best part about the Bus Patrol program is that we operate in 500 school districts across the country, in dozens of states. And across our portfolio of nearly 40,000 school buses nationwide, 92% of the time that someone receives a violation that was created by a Bus Patrol evidence package, they never commit the violation again. It permanently changes their behavior, which is why we're really proud of the fact that in the communities that we serve, you see massive drop-offs in this type of behavior within the first 3 to 4 years as the public becomes educated and recognizes that, hey, school buses give tickets. And so once that happens, people start to curb their behavior, and you start getting much, much safer roadways around school buses, because the people are driving and they recognize, hey, when I see that big yellow school bus, which is designed to be seen, flashing lights, stop signs, giant yellow, they know I need to slow down, be a little bit safer, because those buses give out tickets.
What's interesting about what you said is that 87% support this program.
Right.
What are the 13% thinking?
Look,
how could they not?
I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think that there are some people who just generally, have concern around, cameras. At the end of the day, it's 2025. You can't go anywhere in public without being on camera anymore, right? And all of us carry a high definition in our pocket. It's just the reality of the circumstances. And I think that generally speaking, most rational people believe that safer roadways are in their best interest. And photo enforcement is the fastest way to safer roadways in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that the bus drivers are applauding this, and probably the people that are out there in front saying, "Put this technology on my bus."
That's right. School bus drivers and organizations like the National Pupil Transportation Association are enormously in favor of this. There was a study in 2017 by the National Highway Traffic Safety Institute that studied a really, really terrible circumstance that happened in Rochester, Indiana, in which a car blew through a stop sign on a rural road, believe it or not. and struck 4 children, killing 3 of them, all siblings. Really, really tragic story. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Institute did a study around this and determined that from 2011 to 2021, there were 128,000 school bus related accidents in this country, 1,100 fatalities, half of which were under the age of 10. And so from that study, they recommended that every municipality in this country adopt a program like that. And that's really where this industry started to grow dramatically. And you started to see a lot of communities start to adopt this program. And it was that study, along with drivers and other folks in the industry who see this stuff every single day, realizing this is a real problem, this is a real solution, and we need to start seeing it deployed throughout the country.
When a driver receives a notice in the mail, what does it look like? Do they have a time to pay it? What is the violation, or does that vary from place to place? So when they get something in the mail, what is their next steps, and what does it look like for them?
Yeah. So it's a notice of violation, just like any other ticket that you might get if you ever went through like a automated tolling system without having, your pass up there, whatnot. Similar to that. It's going to be a violation. It's going to be very clear at the top what it is. And then there's actually going to be photos right there showing your vehicle, the date, the time, the GPS location, all of that, and still photos on the notice of violation showing the violation occurring. It's also going to have a website on there, alertbus.com, that you can go to, log in, and put your violation number, and you can watch the video evidence right there. And you can determine whether or not you think that you're guilty. If you do, and most folks, see high definition 4K video of themselves passing a school bus and recognize they made a mistake, and you can go ahead and elect to pay the fine right there. Some municipalities have payment plans, some don't. Depends on the municipality and the state law. And you generally have about 30 days to respond to your violation and to pay it. Or you can contest. You can say, I'm not guilty, and I'd like to be heard in court and have the evidence presented and argue my case in front of a judge. And you can do all of that right there online. So the notice of violation is going to have all those details, all that information, the date, time, location, and then the video evidence that you can log on and review as well.
So how much are these violations? Do they vary from place to place and city to city and state to state?
So they do vary from state to state. The state sets the fine amount, the violation. I would say the national average is about $250. There are some states that are a little bit less. There are some states that are more, but the national average is about $250 for a violation. A little bit more than what a photo enforcement, like a red light or a speed camera ticket generally is. And I think that is recognized by state lawmakers that this is a little bit more serious of an offense than maybe going a little bit over the speed limit here or there. This is involving child safety. And so the $250 ticket is a deterrent. And it's reflected in that number I shared with you before, where 92% of folks who get to this violation never commit the violation again. Part of that is the fine amount, and people recognizing this is a serious infraction. I need to make sure I don't ever do this again.
You say on your website that you are a community partner with the school district, with the community, and that you can install this and run it at no cost. Someone, though, has to pay for it because someone's paying you, and this equipment costs money. So where is the money coming from, and how are you guys getting paid?
Yeah, it's one of the best parts of this program is, myself, I'm a former public servant, and so many other folks at Bus Patrol are former law enforcement, former public servants, really recognize the challenges that local communities have. Every local community in this country is in a permanent state of fiscal scarcity. Nobody has extra tax dollars laying around, right? And so, but people also recognize that the world is changing. We need technology. We need public safety. And we need to find ways to be able to fund it. And so Bus Patrol's come up with a really unique value proposition for communities in which we run a violator-funded program. So we come in and if we win an RFP or we're selected by a community to serve, we come in and partner with the community. We actually privatize the capital investment of these buses, which is in some places, like in the city of Denver, it would be millions and millions and millions of dollars that the government would have to expend in taxpayer dollars or in capital to make that investment. The company does it on behalf of the municipality, no cost to taxpayers whatsoever. Then the program is run, and out of the violator funds that are issued on tickets, the municipality gets those funds and then pays back Bus Patrol for the equipment and for our service costs through the violator funding. So I always like to say, if you break the law and you endanger the life of a child, you pay for the technology to protect kids. If you don't break the law, you don't pay. And if no one breaks the law, no one pays. Our goal, we are truly a mission-driven company. We want to eliminate this behavior in this country. And our goal is to ensure that that last part happens, is that communities learn and are educated around this issue. And over time, people stop committing this violation and create a much safer roadway.
You said that if you're living in a perfect world, you're going to have this technology on the bus and you're not going to have any more violators. You're not going to have anybody passing the school bus. It's going to be a super safe program, and it's going to keep people safe, and we're never going to see anybody pass a bus again. If that happens, you don't have any more violators, and therefore you don't have any more income coming into the municipality and coming to you guys. So isn't that almost cutting your foot off? So I mean, yes, we all want no violations. But do you expect that we're always going to have violations, so therefore that's how you're going to be funded?
It's a great question, and the answer is the world is a very big place. We're on 40,000 buses. As I noted, there's 500,000 school buses in the U.S. There's 550,000 school buses in Canada. There are school buses in the UAE and Mexico and South America, all across the world, right? So there is always opportunities to expand and grow. And for any organization, right? Like pick any company in the world, rewind the clock 50 years. They're not running the same business that they were 50 years ago, right? And so, yeah, I think you can be a company that is mission-driven and focused on eliminating a type of behavior, still figure out a way to be economically viable, and find opportunities to grow. You know, long-term, what we'd be hopeful for is to help continue to identify and design and innovate technologies that make real impact on our roadways. The reason you asked me at the very beginning of this, why was I so interested in coming to BusPatrol, and I'll share with you, a little story if I can, if we have a moment.
Yes.
I was sitting at my desk. I was the head of public safety, chief of public safety for New York City when I was considering coming to BusPatrol, and I was reviewing index crimes as you do in law enforcement on a monthly basis. And we were coming out of COVID, and remember the headlines in New York, the crime was out of control and really difficult challenges in 2020 and 2021. You fast forward 2 years later, and the city, we were able to reduce crime in New York down to the lowest level in recorded history, the third lowest level in recorded history. So really got things back on track. But the one area, and so you're seeing double-digit reductions in trigger pulls and rapes and assaults and all the categories you want. But the one area that we continue to see an impact and growth where you didn't want to see it was vehicular homicide and roadway accidents coming out of COVID. It was growing. Yeah. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, we talk a lot about violent crime in this country. Yeah. Guns kill 48,000 people a year. And when a firearm kills someone, it's a big deal in a community. The community will come out, there'll be a response, it's a tragic event. But sadly, cars kill 46,000 people a year in this country. And people don't seem to have the same level of focus that they do on violent crime about vehicular safety. And if someone was killed in a car accident around the block from you on a Saturday night, you may never even hear about something like that. And yet it's the same level of tragedy as if they were killed with a firearm. Yeah. And so as I was looking at these index crimes and considering what I wanted to do, I realized that if I were to hypothetically eliminate murder in New York City, it would take me 200 years to save as many people's lives as I could save if we could find a reduction nationwide in vehicular homicides by just 20%. The same type of reduction that police departments enjoy in violent crime all of the time. Yeah. And so what I'm really focused on and what we're really focused on at BusPatrol isn't just about photo enforcement or generating revenue, but it's about finding real world solutions that we can partner with local municipalities to have real impact, measurable impact on real public safety challenges. Very few companies out there right now can say our product actually eliminates the problem. Our product at BusPatrol actually impacts the problem. And so my hope is long term, we will develop additional tools that help to continue to make roadways safer and start to reduce the type of those number of vehicular homicides that we were talking about long term. And so there's a lot of opportunity to grow here. There's a lot of opportunity to have a positive impact, and we believe that we're on the road to doing that.
But going back to that, it's a lot like smoking. We obviously know that smoking is not good. And we know that smoking kills people. We've been talking about this for 100 years. But people or the states and the federal government, they put taxes on cigarettes. And because they're also doing education to get people to smoke less. And so, because that's a great thing to get people to smoke less. But when fewer people are smoking, fewer tax dollars are coming in because you know how government works. They they say, well, there's going to be this many people smoking and buying cigarettes, so we're going to have this much tax revenue coming in. It's similar to the new tax that just went in for New York City, the congestion tax. They're counting on a certain number of drivers coming in there paying the congestion tax, but they're trying to prevent people from coming into the city. So the congestion tax hopefully will keep people from coming into the city at those certain times, so they would collect less money, but they have already counted on that money to go to a certain program or this or that. And so unfortunately, I'm hoping that your program is great, where you can give it to the municipal, the bus to the school systems to put on their buses free of charge for them, and you're getting reimbursed by the violations. But if we have fewer violations or no violations, then that cost is going to go into the school system.
So our contracts are actually designed and specifically state that the school district is only ever required to remit payment to BusPatrol out of the violator funded funds. Yeah. If the program does not generate enough funding to pay for BusPatrol services, the school district is not responsible to pay for us.
But do they get to keep it?
Do they get to keep the equipment?
They get to keep the equipment and the system and everything going?
Yeah, for the life of the contract. Okay. Absolutely.
And how long are these contracts usually?
Generally about 5 years.
Okay. So let's say after 5 years, could a school system then have the stuff removed?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Never had that happen. We have 100% renewal because the program does have such a great impact and it does work so well. But yeah, of course, like any other contract, if the termination point comes and the contractees decide not to renew.
Well, not that they wouldn't renew, but you might not want to because there's nobody that's violating the law and then, passing the buses, and then you're not getting any money.
Yeah, that is a possibility. I mean, as I think, I think your cigarette example is a great example, right? Is it you don't change massive behavior across millions of people overnight. It takes a long time. It takes many years, and certainly over 5, right? I mean, cigarette campaigns were on for 15 or 20 years before you really started seeing generational impact and drop off in that usage. Same way here, right? We anticipate that type of generational change, but it's going to take a number of years, and that's why we consider ourselves a community partner and not just a service provider. We are there to partner with that community to see that life cycle through and to help to try to continue to innovate and offer new opportunities for other areas of safety within those communities as well.
My guest is Justin Meyers. He's BusPatrol's president and chief innovation officer, talking about their safety program that they have for school buses around the country. You are planning to launch, as I read on your website, the Road to Safety podcast. Not to be confused with the Road Safety podcast out of Scotland. There's also another road safety podcast somewhere else that hasn't published in a couple of years. But how will this show be different? So names are important in podcasting. I'll tell you that right now, Justin. Yeah. But how will this show be different from what's out there right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jason. We're public safety aficionados. We're not the best comms people all the time, I suppose. We need folks like you helping us to design that podcast. Look, we look at enforcement on school buses we look at eliminating this behavior as a multi-pronged approach. I have the opportunity to speak to groups all over the country on a regular basis and educate school board members and PTAs around this problem. And I never sell our product. What I do is go and educate around what the problem is and how communities can choose and elect to do this, because I really, really fundamentally believe that automated enforcement must be a community decision and driven by the community. The larger, broader community has to say, hey, we have a problem and we want to protect our kids, or we want to do this or that, and make that election. So I never really push the product. I simply say, here's the problem and here are your options. We view the options on eliminating this problem in three ways. You have traditional law enforcement, right? So police officers going out, following school buses and issuing a ticket. Now, as we talked at the beginning of the show, it's really comes out to, on average, about once every couple of days, you're going to see an illegal car pass a school bus. Mm-hmm. We don't have enough police officers in this country, and it's really not a good use of public safety to just have them following around a school bus for 4 straight days to try to find that one violator, right? But you can do traditional law enforcement, and we do encourage local law enforcement to keep their eyes peeled for this particular type of violation. It's an important prong in that multi-pronged approach. The second piece of it is automated enforcement. The system works well. We just talked about that. The third piece is education. And education is the most important piece of this, both educating drivers and students, right? Because the whole point here at the end of the day is protecting those kids. And if you can educate students, then on how they should be thinking about the roadway, where they should be looking, and how they should be cautious, you can also have a great impact on their safety. And so we think about that podcast as another opportunity to educate drivers around the statistics on this thing, what's really happening in your community, and how this could impact your kids or the children in your hometown. And so that's our hope, is that we'll be able to have some important discussions like this and start to educate folks around this issue.
When are you going to have your first episode?
Jay, we're gonna have to talk to my communications team. They're working to roll it out, but I needed at least a practice round with you, Jason.
Okay, see, there you go. This is it. This is it. I just thought about this while you were talking about when you were talking about the 3 different ways to prevent this. When you have an officer following a school bus around, that's a deterrent. So somebody who might have passed the bus might not have because they saw the officer there. But do you have any signs on the bus that warn drivers of that there is a system on there?
So again, every state's a little bit different, but by and large, most states require, and we actually encourage states to push for big education campaigns. So those come in a couple of different components. The first one is, like, let's say hypothetically, the city of Denver wanted to do this program. They elected to do it. They went through the proper process, all of that, and bang, we're going to roll out this program. What we would do is recommend, and oftentimes it's put into the state law, sometimes it's not, but either way, we recommend a 30-day warning period. So do a big press conference on day one, announce that the program's coming, and usually for many weeks or months leading up to the launch of a warning period, there's a lot of public information, a lot of media coverage, social media, pushing that information out to the public. Just the same way, I was just in Denver this week from the airport. There's those big signs on the highway that say, like, in one day, we're going to start enforcing weaving coming in and out of the OV lanes, right? So same way, you do a lot of notice so that people are educated and know that that's coming. Then you do a 30-day warning period where once the buses are equipped and the program is live, the first 30 days of violators don't get a ticket. They get a letter in the mail that says, hey, there's a new program in town. Here's how it works. And if you do this again in 30 days, you're going to get a $250 ticket. On top of that, you're going to do a lot of social media pushes. We encourage all stakeholders, law enforcement, school districts, mayors, legislators, to push this information out to constituents and educate the community. Oftentimes, superintendents will partner with the school district to provide information to put on the website. And we also encourage them to send letters out to parents to notify parents of the new program that's going on in that school district. So every community is a little bit different, but we do this multi-pronged communication approach to make sure that we're saturating as well as we can to educate drivers and students. Then BusPatrol employees, myself included, will go out into the schools and educate kids. We have a really cool video and a little bit of an hour-long presentation that we engage with kids as young as first grade, educating them on proper ways to get on and off a school bus. And then, depending on what the state law requires, most states do require signage. Sometimes the signage is on the bus. So on the back of the bus, there'll be a big sign that says photo enforced. Also, In some municipalities, we actually install road signs so that you know as you're entering and exiting that municipality that school buses, there'll be road signs all over the sides of the road that say school buses give tickets. Just the same way that if you're driving around Boulder and you're going
Yep.
to have a red light camera coming up, there'll be a sign that says photo enforcement at that intersection coming up. Same type of thing. So we really do go above and beyond just putting up a sign, really trying to educate drivers and let folks know that the system is here. It's here to protect kids, and you need to be aware of it. You need to slow down and stop for that school bus.
I think the kids would just prefer 30-second TikTok videos.
You know, you get them young enough. Sometimes they're still interested in a 2 or 3 minute cartoon. But yes, you're probably right. We, as I said, we need a little bit of help on our communications team.
Yeah. If you could get Bluey to do it, then you got
Yes,
comedy gold.
yeah.
Then it's gold.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
As you mentioned, you were just here in Denver. I'm sorry I couldn't get away to meet you. But what brought you here? Are you meeting with some of the school districts here in Colorado?
Yeah, so we're always engaged in having conversations across municipalities, right? It's a matter of education. It's a matter of having conversations about what's available, what's
I
out
want you
there.
to break some news here. I want you to say, yeah, we're going to have the city of Denver school buses all on your program.
I don't have that news. We would welcome the opportunity, but no, we have not yet had that conversation with the city of Denver, but would certainly welcome the opportunity. Actually, I was there for personal reasons mostly. My wife went to CU Boulder, and my wife and I got married out in the mountains, and so this month is our anniversary month, and we always come out to Colorado to enjoy our favorite place in the country, frankly.
Yeah, well, happy anniversary. You're welcome here anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's one of the greatest places in the entire world, as you know that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and we're trying to make it better every day with getting people to stop passing buses. So, Justin, thanks again so much for the time. I appreciate all your insight, your efforts on this. I wish you the nothing but super success with this, because I have talked to bus drivers many times in the past. I would hang out at my kids' pickup and at school, and I'd sit there and talk to the bus drivers about what they face and what they do every single day. I thought about actually one of our old photographers when he retired to go be a school bus driver up in Fort Collins because
Wow.
it's a good second job when you're retired.
Right.
And so he sees this all the time, tells me stories, and so it is one of those problems that can be fixed and should be fixed, and it's easy to fix.
It absolutely is. And I would just say to anybody who's listening, please, please, please pay attention. They're built to be noticed. They're big, they're giant, they're yellow. They have flashing signs and stop signs on them. And it's only 30 seconds. Take that time, slow down, stop for the bus, give the kids the opportunity to get to and from school safely. It's better for your community. It's better for your children. And it's just the right thing to do. But Jason, thank you so much for having me. This was really, really fun. It was great to have the opportunity to chat with you and hopefully educate a few folks around this problem. And I look forward to having the opportunity to chat again.
Yeah, definitely. And again, you can find them on buspatrol.com. I'll have the links to that in the description of this show. But when you go to Bus Patrol, it shows you that how all this works. So they have a video right there in the front of the main page of their website, and it shows you the little sensor there, and it shows you somebody passing a bus when the bus is stopped, and that it's capturing the information from that bus and then uploading it to the their system. And also it's there's a lot of information on their website. They even have a blog on there, so you can get some more information. So it's again buspatrol.com, and that link is in the description of the show. And like I told Justin, I used to hang out and talk to the bus drivers when my daughters were in elementary school, and I could stand there and talk to the drivers about what issues they face, and they would tell me stories. And I still have bus drivers will email me and tell me stories, especially when I'm doing a story about bus drivers, or like at the beginning of the year, we're always talking about drivers and driver safety and being safe around the school zones, and they'll send me notes about, hey, there was this guy who passed me, and it's always running my reds, is what they say, and it happens all the time. So I would love to see a program like this here with any of the school districts in Metro Denver, including mine, even though my kids don't ride on the bus, but other kids do, and every kid deserves to be safe around a school bus. Every school should be a safe place for kids. Every bus should be a safe place for kids. And if I just don't understand why people go fast in a school zone. It just drives me. I almost one day just drove up and down a school zone at the school zone speed limit to slow people down, just because it makes me that infuriated. Anyway, that's a little extreme, but then again, I'm also the same guy who throws tennis balls out in the street when I see somebody speeding down my street, thinking that hopefully the driver is thinking that a kid is going to be chasing that tennis ball and they'll slow down. Usually they don't, and then we get into a little discussion on the side of the road. Anyway, thanks to Justin, and thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I'm Jason Luber, the traffic guy. Be safe, and as always, happy motoring.